Alright guys, it's been a while, but here's finally the first part of my FPS HUD tutorial series. This should probably be like a 2 or 3 part series at most. We're going to go ahead and start out with just basically the game text and how to get that set up and how to add it to the gameplay scene. But that's fairly obvious. I mean, we've done that a few times. Essentially, I put on my camera and it's just the always FPS HUD. And then it adds the overlay scene of FPS HUD. That's all we need. And let's go ahead and take a look at the HUD scene there. And essentially, that's just a camera there, and you can see we have all of our stuff going on there. So, and I'm actually not sure what that is. I think whatever. So kind of as I said before, based off Battlefield 3, but these are all these backgrounds here. It's just a diffuse color or a light blue color, and it's shadeless. And we put the transparency on, Z transparency alpha 0.133. So that's pretty much all the same thing for all of our backgrounds. So they're all that transparency. I think it looks nice and it gives it kind of a nice, it doesn't overpower you, but it looks nice when you're playing it. So it just kind of gives it a nice clean look. So let's go back to our little HUD thing here. Now these things here are game text objects, and that's actually a texture that you can download. I'll see if I can find it. I've watched a movie somewhere, some sort of tutorial that showed me where to download this. It was for an older version of Blender, so I had to make a few changes, but essentially this is a game text object. So let's go ahead. First off, it's just a regular plane that is, let's go ahead and zoom in on it. Regular plane that is created, and then it's textured with this material, game text material. Everything that is game text is the same texture, and it's shadeless. And then game settings, backface culling and text. So, and then the alpha blend is going to be alpha sort, and face orientation is going to be shadow. So then this is what threw me and I had to post. The transparency needs to be checked, Z transparency and the alpha all the way down. Then let's take a look at the actual texture here. Go ahead and let's make this just a little bit bigger there. So the texture, we just have that texture map right there, and then I UV map it so that it's on the A right there, just so you know that is game text. So, and then down here under alpha, click use. These should all be there by default, and nothing really. Coordinates UV, nothing too crazy for this. Then under the influence, we're going to check color and alpha, and then everything else should be pretty much, well, color should already be checked, but pretty much everything else should remain the same, and then you should be all set for your game textures. Alright, so once you have all that checked, if you go back, you should see here where it looks, very alpha. So, so that's your basics of your game text. That's how to get it set up. And alright, there we go. Now these objects here were made by doing, if you do Shift A, add text, and then just hit the tab key to go into edit, and then you can just delete and type A, and then tab. There's your A. Now if you just leave it like that and hit the play button, that's going to look terrible. That's going to look very blurred and hard to see, especially when you get smaller. If you get small like that, it's going to look really bad in the game engine. So thing I like to do is convert to mesh from curve meta surfer text. So that's going to make it into an actual mesh. So when you hit play, it's going to look, as you can see, a little better than when it was an actual, let's see if I can get it back to, it was an actual text object. So there you go. There's a good demo. All right, we'll delete that. So that's what I used for the grenade, and that's a small X, and then that was a slash there. So, and the health bar I'm still working on. I haven't gotten that finished yet. And then that's another game text object. So that's essentially the quick and easy way to set up a basic HUD. So when you position it, it's just going to add, when you add the overlay scene, it's just going to add whatever sees in the camera. So I just position it right near the corners there of the camera. And these are supposed to be like safe areas for certain viewing screens. You know, I'm not worried about that yet. So then of course our map is going to be over on the side with the background. And now we're going to talk about changing and adding properties. So first thing, for now at least, what I found I had to do is add a game property called text. And then that's whatever you want to display when you hit the play button. And so it's going to hit 8. If I didn't put that, it would display nothing until I change it. But obviously we're going to change the original property there through Python. So let's take a look at that. Let's go ahead and go to our HUD.py. Pop that open. Alright, so this is our HUD.py. As I told you before, I showed you a little bit before in the previous video, that's called, this function is actually called from our player move fire. So it's not, this actually is literally is not connected to anything. It's all called from player move fire. I just thought that'd be a better way to do it. Although it does take a little bit of finagling to get everything working, as you can see through the try and exception. So so essentially, we're going to go to the HUD scene, HUD-scene.objects, ammo clip. That's our text object right there. This is our ammo clip text object. So, and that object has this right here, a game property called text. So ammo clip text object text equals. So that's how you change it right there in the Python script. That's it. That's all you have to do to change what it shows on that game text object. And we can obviously do the same thing for all of our text objects. You know, our ammo total text object. If you go back into here, this is our ammo total text object. Just ammo total again, called in here, ammo total, HUD-scene.objects ammo total. And there you go. Then you can change the ammo total right there. Very simple, very easy. Since we are calling this obviously from our main script, it's not adding it until the next logic tick. So that's why I have the try HUD scene. I don't know if I explained this before or not. That's why I have the try HUD scene and then exception name error. And then if we're on our first logic tick, it's just going to print initializing HUD, and then set our HUD to initialize. And then by the next time it goes around, it will be able to add this HUD scene. So, and that's how we have to do that, but it does work, and it works well. So, and we have been doing great on time. So let's go ahead, and I think we can do our entire mini map, although this will be a longer tutorial obviously for that. But there are two ways to do it. One was video texture that I said in the previous tutorial. That works amazingly well, but it does unfortunately take up a ton of memory, a ton. It really eats into your resources. So I had to come up with another way to do it, and there is another way to do it that takes a good amount of finagling, a lot more finagling than video texture, but it does work. So what we have here is just a Minimap plane, and the plane has a UV image on it, and as you can see, the image is literally just an image of my level. So I literally, you know, you can render it out, whatever you want to do. This is just my test object, so I would go ahead on your obvious one, delete all the, or hide all the lights. Don't delete them, obviously. Hide everything except for what you want. And you can even, after you bake out the image, you can go ahead and, in GIMP, if you want, you can desaturate it. Whatever you want to do to make it look like a different, like an actual mini map. A lot of times you'll see they're just they're gray or they're outlined or stuff like that. So, all right, so that we just UV map it, but if we want to take a look at it, I just have the UV map set to this portion, which is where the player starts, and it's going to be what you'll see on your mini map. So, and what we're going to do in Python is move the UV coordinates along with your player, which takes some doing, but is possible. So, you'll see here, I also have another little icon here that represents our player, and that is actually another object that is hanging over our actual map. So we have, our background map and then our object there. So, and this object has one little bit of logic breaks that took me a while to figure out. That's an always sensor, and then a constraint. And we're going to constrain this along the z-axis, which means it can only turn on the z-axis. So it can't flip sideways or flip crazy angles, because I just wanted to show where you're facing in that direction. I don't care about anything else. So, which is good, because when we try and set it without that, it's going to go all crazy directions as your player moves around. So, all right, let's take a little bit of a look at our text editor here and go to our main player move fire. And we're using this a lot. This is very much like the HUD, especially since it's the same scene. It's a lot like the HUD setup. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our import statements, and we're going to import Minimap, our entire thing, just like we did. Well, from HUD we did import HUD update, which I might be able to just do that from Minimap import. I think it's like Minimap update. So that's essentially all we need there. But let's take a look at what we have here. So this right here is our map logic. So what we need for the map logic, let's go to our gameplay, is on our main little guy here. We're going to add another, and this looks different than from last time. I'm experimenting with ladders and slopes because those weren't working the way I had it, and I found a workaround for an issue I was having for a while, and I'm trying out a different whole system, but we'll work on that. We have something called map timer right here at the bottom here, and that's just a timer, and it goes up. That's all it does. So if our map timer is less than 0.5, and this is our this is essentially how often our minimap is going to update. That's essentially what that timer is going to tell you. And essentially what we're trying to do in this little slab of logic here is we're trying to figure out how far our player has moved and in what direction he has moved. So we need to calculate his position once and then wait, X number, in this case 0.seconds, and then grab the location again and then compare the two. So that's essentially all we're doing. And I didn't go that route, so let's delete that. So essentially it's going to, we have to put this at the end of our controller.activate, because that's when we move. That's right there, it moves us right there, and then we're going to take our minimap and go there. And this is the actual thing here. I imported minimap and it calls minimap.minimap update right there. So alright, so we are taking our game logic. It really should have been logic. It's just the way I started out, but whatever. Our global dictionary is player position initial equals own dot world position, and owner, that means our body box, literally our little box that has a Python attached to it, and then the world position. World position is a vector. That means it returns 3 values, your X, Y, and Z position in the world. Now if I had just stored own.world position in there, that is actually is a pointer, so that would literally change every time I printed this variable out. So I need to, there's a function called .copy, which means that it stores it as a static, not a dynamic. So that works out well. And that's one thing I had to post on the forums because I couldn't figure out how to do that. So I was going to grab, and our init means initial position. And then, so what's going to happen is when the timer, when you first run the script, it's going to hit this first because it's going to be less than 0.5. And because the logic takes 60 times per second, so it's definitely going to be less than 0.5. And it's going to go in here and it's going to grab our world position, it's going to copy, and then it's going to try and go through this loop, and it's going to say, oh, it's not greater than 0.7, and it's going to skip this entire loop, and then it's going to go on to the next loop. And then once it loops through enough times, it's not going to get this, and it's going to instead grab the map timer here. And this is our secondary loop. So it's going to grab our position again, our world position, and it's going to copy into our player position secondary. And it's going to go into the global dictionary because this needs to be stored in the global dictionary because it won't be called at the same time as this. So it's going to go into our global dictionary and it's going to grab our player position initial, and it's going to take our secondary. So where are we now minus where we were, how many logic ticks ago, and it's going to store that in a global dictionary under player position change. And then it's going to take our secondary position and store it back into our initial position so that we can start over again. In fact, I don't think that's necessary. Whatever, we'll keep it there for now. And then it's going to reset our map timer to 0. So, and then it's going to call minimap.map update. So we're going to go to minimap. And this is a bunch, I'm going to post another link. I really like Goran's tutorials, Python, and the Blender Game Engine. And this is where this is from. Someone else in the forums alerted me to something they had done with it, so that's where I got most of this stuff here. So let's go ahead, and when we call minimap update, it's going to go to here, and it's going to from BGE import logic, control, yep, blah blah blah, getting our owner. It's going to try, just like it with our HUD thing, it's going to try again HUD scene. If we get a name error, it's going to go to here, and if own init HUD equals 1, which it won't at first, and we literally don't have to initialize in our else function because our HUD.py is already doing it for us. So I know it's getting complex. I wish there was a simpler solution to it, but as far as I know, there isn't. So it's going to pass that first time. If it doesn't, that's another command I learned, pass. So technically I could delete it because usually I would just put print pass because it would error out if I didn't have something there. So, but pass is what you call there. So it's going to pass, and the next time it's going to say, oh hey, our HUD is initialized. So then we're going to print here, and then we're going to call update map immediately, and that's up here. Defined as one of our functions, and then we're going to go and from BGE import logic texture, and then we're going to grab our scene game, which means our game scene and our HUD scene. And our player is going to be our body box, so that's just our character. And our player icon is going to be that blue tiny thing, and that's our scene HUD.objects player icon. And then our map object is going to be our map plane, and then it's going to get the verts in our that calls the get verts map object, and that's calling our plane and getting the verts of the UV. So that's pretty much that'll all be explained in the tutorial link that I'll post, if not remind me. And then our player move is going to be the global dictionary player position change that we set right before we called this in our player move fire. Then I just print that so that I know how much everything's going to move. Now, this is the interesting part. We need to figure out how much to move the UVs, and to do that you should technically figure out how big your entire map is, and then how big your UVs are, and then kind of divide it
but you have to go through and kind of do trial and error. That's how I figured these values out, was just by trial and error. So, and it's calling player move 0, which is our X, and then player move 1, which is our Y, and we do have a player move 2, which is our Z, but we don't care about our Z, and we couldn't even move, the UVs don't work with Z because they're just X and Y, and they're all normalized, so that's why we have to do all this dividing, because the largest UV we can get is 1. So if we go back, let's take a look. Go to our FPS, go to, well, probably didn't have to do that, but yeah. So if we look at this, this is our UV image. This is 0, 0, and I believe it's 1, 1, 0, 1, or 1, 0, whichever way it goes. So it's all normalized. So let's go back to our text editor, and boom. Okay, so then we're dividing that out, and then UV equals V, that get UV. Now get UV will return 2 values. UV1 is our X, I believe. Yep, and then UV0 is our Y. And that seems backwards, but it works for me. Um, so what we're doing is getting our UV, and we're setting, or we're storing the value UV1 equals player move X, which we just set there, and then we're setting it. And then also at the very end, we're updating our blue player icon, and that's fairly easy. It was very easy in the end, and then it's world orientation. So we're taking our player icon world orientation. So where is our blue icon facing? And we're going to say it equals our player world orientation, so that whenever they move, they'll be the same. They'll be facing the same direction. World orientation is a 3x3 matrix. Wow. So I had experimented a ton of times with trying to get it to just, so you can do like, and that's like column 1, I believe. Or, yeah, column 1, and then you could just try, if you just did 1, it would be like row 1, stuff like that. That would be row 0. None of that seemed to work. So eventually I stumbled across randomly across the orientation constraint, z-axis, and then that's all I had to do was just world orientation to world orientation, and things worked just fine. So we're going to go ahead and, oops, go back to our gameplay, and then just, as you can see, we'll take a quick look here. Now you can see if I turn left or right, my player icon will turn and face with it. So if I spin in a circle, it'll spin in a circle as well. And then if we start walking forward, you can see it updates. And obviously I still have a little bit more work to do, but it's right on the edge, works fine there. You walk along the edge, walk along the edge, walk along the edge. You can see it says I'm off the edge, but I'm not. So that's just a little bit of tweaking you might have to do. It all depends. It depends on how accurate you want it to be too. So, and you can see walking along here, it works if I run as well, because it'll take the samples of me running. And there we go. That's how you make. Obviously, one of the areas is I'm walking under a massive block right now, but it shows me walking over it. And I'm not sure what the easiest way to do with that. You might have to add a ray sensor above the player that casts down, and if it can't touch the player itself, turn the visibility of the blue icon to off, so that when you go under things, it turns your little player icon off. But fair enough. That's something for a more advanced tutorial. It's probably not something I'm going to fix, because I'm still not sure if I'm going to have a minimap in the game at all. But all right, so that's pretty much how to set up a FPS HUD, basic FPS HUD so far. The next tutorial, I think we'll cover our health bar